today. You have to find 2 ethical dilemmas, and I'm going to point them out to you. You're going to write this paper in 10 minutes right after class, I promise. I'm going to write the paper for you. And then you have to talk about mandated reporting and how you feel about reporting a colleague, and we'll talk about that at the end. So 2 ethical dilemmas, how you feel about children's services now, and mandated reporting. So what do you think? Child abuse and neglect occurs rarely.
False.
That is false. Okay. Ohio ranks 11th in the country for having the most calls of child abuse. That's not a great place to be, but our mandated reporting law is so good in Ohio. We've got 24 mandated professionals, and the law is very clear about what your role is. When you get hired into your district, anybody here want to get hired into a school district right away? Anybody interested in working? Okay, very good. You will have a 4-hour training on child abuse and neglect. So we're just touching briefly so you guys get a great paper out of this, and we'll get you that information. In Summit County, we had over 10,000 phone calls last year of child abuse and neglect. So we are a very busy organization at Children's Services, making sure that all those calls are answered and going out to see kids to make sure they're safe. Question 2, child abuse and neglect occur at about the same frequency. What do you think? It's actually false. We do receive more calls on neglect than we do on abuse. Neglect has a very broad definition. We're going to talk about that at about question 6. Abuse is a little more specific. Now I can tell you that in Summit County, 1 out of 4 times, when you call me about Tommy who has a slap mark on his face because you see it in the school, when I go out to his home to do the investigation or the assessment, we find that the child's also been neglected. No pillows, sheets, blankets, no utilities, mom's strung out on drugs, things you didn't know because you weren't in the home to see. So that's why it's really important we do home visits, because we need to see how these kids live. All right? Abused and neglected children are almost always from low-income families.
False.
False. Are there people in Hudson Stowe and Silver Lake who abuse their children and neglect their children? Absolutely. So why do we receive more calls on low-income families?
Because they're watched more.
Very good. Because they're watched more, basically by social workers in the places that they frequent. So for example, I'm pretty middle class. I have a great daughter. She's over here in Ritchie Hall at Akron U. Last year she was a majorette for her high school. Hannah and I would have gotten into a fight, and I would have punched her in the face and gave her a black eye, and she needed medical treatment. I would have taken her to my private pediatrician and told him that Hannah is so, you should see her, she's so like clumsy. And she fell in a hole and she got a black eye. Now, it's just me, the pediatrician, and Hannah. Do you think Hannah's going to say anything different with her mom sitting in the room? No. Pediatrician finds me to be a great mom. He writes her out a prescription and sends us on our way. The next week, Hannah and I get into another fight. This time I break her arm. I'm not taking her to the same pediatrician. I got $150 in my pocket. I'll take you to another private doctor who won't ask me any questions. Okay? Because people of affluency can doctor shop and get the things that they need that way. If you are limited financially, you're utilizing WIC and ODJFS, and you're utilizing Children's Hospital for non-emergency care. There are social workers in all of those professions. So yes, there's a lot of people looking at you. They ask questions of our families that you guys would find so insulting. Okay, so that's how that happens. Neglect is most apt to involve children from infancy to 6 years of age. That's false. Are teenagers being abused and neglected?
Yep.
Yes. So we do worry about our kids under 6. There's no safety net for some of these kids. Some of them are not in daycare or preschool. Some of them don't see a pediatrician regularly. There's no extra set of eyes on these kids. So we do worry about kids under 6. But we need to worry about our teenagers too. Now, there are people in here. Is anyone still 18 in this room? 19? Oh, we have a couple 18, 19-year-olds? So just a couple years ago, if you needed to call Children's Services because you needed help, we would have helped you. I don't care if you're going to be 18 tomorrow. If we have a kid who needs help, we're going to help them today. Okay? If you're still in high school and you're 18, we're going to help you till you graduate. Because here's what we believe at Children's Services. You have a right to be in middle school and know that when you come home tonight, there's something to eat. You may not like what your mom made for you, but there's something to eat. Do you think that there are kids that go breakfast and lunch at school and then no dinner until breakfast the next day? You're going to see those kids in your classroom. That doesn't make us happy, but that's sometimes what happens. And we work with those families to make sure that they have food. A girl in high school has a right to know that she can go to sleep tonight and not have to fight someone off the top of her in the middle of the night. Girls should not have to self-protect. We should not have to call 911. We have a right to be safe in our own home. Boys have a right to know that they can go to sleep whenever they want. They don't have to stay awake and wait for mom to go to sleep. There are kids in Akron, in Summit County, kids down the street from you guys, maybe people in this room when you were younger, who stayed awake to make sure that mom would be safe, that the partner in the home, maybe it was your dad, mom's boyfriend, her partner, wouldn't beat her up. Is that acceptable to anyone in this room? Not acceptable for us either. So we help kids all the way through, and we know that abuse and neglect involves kids of all ages. Question 5. Most abusive and neglectful parents suffer from severe mental illness. False? It is false. This may be an ethical dilemma you want to write about in your paper, because I'm going to say some things that you may say, whoa, Children's Services, what are you talking about? A Children's Service says we need to be able to show how a parent's mental health impacts the care of a child. Okay? How does it impact the care of a child? It's the same for substance abuse, so that one may be a little bit easier to draw a conclusion from. If you're a mom and your kid comes home from school and you help them with their schoolwork and you make dinner and they get a shower, they get a bath, you spend some time, you put them to bed, when they're sound asleep, you go outside and smoke a joint. When you go to sleep, you get up in the morning, you get them on the school bus, they go to school, and you carry on throughout your day. We're not worried about that. If you're a mom who's smoking marijuana in front of your kid when they come home from school and you're too strung out to help them with their homework and you don't have food because you've been spending your money on marijuana, and there are men and women in and out of your house buying, smoking, purchasing, whatever, marijuana, are we concerned about those kids? There's a little bit of a difference. Hey, big guy, here you go. How are you?
Good, how are you? Thank you.
Do you see the difference between the two scenarios? So how do the drugs and alcohol impact the care of the child? There are people in this room who were raised with an alcoholic parent. Did that impact your development? I don't know. I don't know you personally. I see you sitting here, you look cognitively alert and ready to go. I see you sitting here without any physical impairments, but I don't know how that alcohol impacted you socially or emotionally. All right? When we talk about mental illness, I had an opportunity to work with a woman. She had 4 stair-step children, not teenagers, so 12, 11, 10, 9, or 8, 9, 10, 11, right in that age group. The referent said that the mother had paranoid schizophrenia, so we go out to the home to check on the care of the kids. There was aluminum foil in the front window of the home. If you see aluminum foil on someone's home, it's a pretty good clue that someone in that home suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. Because the reason they put the aluminum foil on the window is to keep the voices out of the house. Okay, but the voices are really in your head, so that's not really helpful. You have a lot of students in your class. She had carpet runners that you had to walk on. Okay, if you walked off that carpet runner, we were going to have a problem that day because Satan kind of took over the uncarpeted areas. It was crazy stuff. She heard voices, and she had a CSS worker. A CSS worker is a social worker that comes out to your home to make sure that you take your meds. They come out every day, they say good morning, they hand you the meds, they make sure you take it, and then they come back the next day. Because it was imperative that she took her medication. Do you think that this woman with such severe mental illness should be raising 4 stair-step children? We didn't think so. We went to court and we filed for custody of these kids. I presented my argument to the court, and then Mom's defense attorney had his turn. The kids go to school? Yes. Do the kids are they fed? Yes. Do they have a place to sleep? Yes. Are they getting their homework done? Are they well cared for? Are they loved? Yes to all those questions. My case was dismissed from court. The judge allowed those kids to stay in that home because she was able to meet their needs. So that's what we're looking for. So you may or may not agree with that. I don't know how those kids ended up turning out, because once the court terminates your involvement, do you think the families really want to voluntarily work with our agency? Not really. So that was the end of my involvement with her. Okay? But I can tell you, for Children's Services, when we go to juvenile court, we have to be able to draw that line. Before we go into 6, I want to talk to you about what a removal looks like. As an intake worker, I've been at the agency for 19 years, the first 15 years working with kids and families. I had an opportunity to work with a lot of families, and I did remove a lot of kids during my first 15 years of work. And it's always very sad, and I want to tell you what it's like. A social worker goes out to the home, we do the assessment investigation, we determine that it's not safe for kids to be there. We leave the home, we call the police assist. Sometimes they send 2 cruisers, sometimes if it's a home that the police are aware of, they'll send 3 or 4 cruisers out to the home. Sometimes they have their lights on, but never their sirens. So they ride up onto the house. I will have 4 to 6 police officers with me if it's a chaotic family, 2 if it's not. They have their walkie-talkies on, they have on their power uniform, their weapons, their cruisers, we're ready to go. Parents let us in the house, they know why we're there. Mom starts crying and screaming, kid starts crying, dad starts yelling. Grandma's on the phone on her way over. The neighbors are coming over to see what's going on and the dog is barking. And the police are yelling at me, go, go, go! Get the kid and get out of here now! Because it's going to get ugly. Because do you think parents fight us for their kids? So their job is to make sure we get the kids out safe and to make sure Children's Services gets out. There may be arrests that throwing the kids in their car seats, pulling down the street, and then strapping them in a couple minutes later, right? So we're just pulling around the corner. Sometimes the removal for the child is worse than what the child has actually been through. When we talk about removing kids, it's for an average of 8 months at a time. That's on average 8 months. Some kids go home the next day, some kids stay for 2 years, some kids never go home, but on average we're looking at 8 months. We remove kids for abuse and neglect, and we all agree in this room that that should happen. But sometimes that abuse or neglect is only 25% of that kid's life, 50% at most. Meanwhile, we have this other large percentage of 50 to 75% where it was really good. I've got brothers and sisters. I get to sleep with my mom sometimes. When my dad's not drinking, he's really nice. Have you met my friends? I go to a great school. I love my teacher. Did you see my dog? My neighbors are so sweet. So when we remove kids for this 25 to 50% of abuse or neglect, we remove them from all of the good stuff too. That tie and separation is so significant to our kids. So when people think that we go out and rescue and save kids, we do to an extent. But we have a lot of work to do when they come into custody then, because we've really broken a lot of family ties. Okay? So when we talk about abuse and neglect, now that we go into it, I want you to keep that in mind. We remove less than 4% of the kids that we actually work with. Okay? So people think we kind of drive around and just pick up all the cute kids. We don't. We do a lot of work with families to try and keep kids in their home. The difference between abuse and neglect is abuse represents an action against a child, while neglect represents a lack of action. That's true. That's the basic gross definition, right? So if you inflict injury on a child, that's abuse. Okay, so abuse is inflicted. Neglect is really just a lack of action. So we talk about neglect. Question 7, there's only one type of neglect. What do you think? False. Can you name the different types of neglect? So there's physical neglect, which is going to be lack of supervision, filthy, dirty home, poor body hygiene. That would be physical neglect. Educational neglect. So these are kids who stay home to take care of younger kids, or mom and dad have a mental health illness that won't allow the kid to go to school. So for example, a 6-year-old kid gets up, gets himself dressed, makes himself breakfast, gets his backpack ready, and he's ready to go, and mom says, yeah, you're not going. But I do want to go. You're not going because you know that principal there, Mr. Arnold? Yeah, he's the devil, and you're just not going. And so the kid wants to go to school, and because of mom's mental health. Or maybe her substance abuse. She's strung out, can't get out of bed to take the kid to school. Those are the kinds of things that we look for. There are kids that miss school. We understand that that happens. We want schools to work with truancy officers. Do you think that there are parents who try and get their kids to school and their kids won't go? Think about the mom in middle school who drives the kid to the front, drops the kid off, she walks to walk in. When mom pulls away, where does the kid go? Out the back door, right. So that mom made an attempt. So that would not be educational neglect on mom because she did make the attempt. But we have some issues to work with the little kid, right? That's physical, educational, medical neglect. Medical neglect, we need to be careful because parents do have rights to make medical decisions for their kids. The biggest, strongest one here for you teachers, and who here is going to be my special ed teachers? Anyone here doing special ed? Great. Getting more and more every year. It's good stuff. IEPs. Everyone's at an IEP meeting. Everyone at the table agrees that little Rachel needs to be on Ritalin. A month goes by, little Rachel's not still on Ritalin. You call mom, mom decided with her husband that they're going to use some herbs instead. They're not going to use Ritalin. They're going to try some herbal supplements. Y'all get real excited about that. We know. Because you call Children's Services and say, mom agreed to do Ritalin, this is medical neglect. That will not be considered medical neglect. That's life or death for you in the classroom, I know. I know these kids are crazy out of control, right, without their medication. When we talked about medical neglect at Children's Services, what we're looking for is life and death. So, a 14-year-old girl who gets out of Children's Hospital needs to be put on Zoloft because she's homicidal, suicidal, and parents say, she's fine, we're not going to worry about those meds. That's life and death, and we'll get involved with that case. So, mental health. A child who threatens suicide and the parents will not make a plan to help her get the help she needs, that's life and death. We'll get involved with that. What about childhood obesity? Do we get involved with childhood obesity? We had one case up in Cleveland where they removed a kid because the child was significantly overweight. I think he developed diabetes, all kinds of medical problems, and Children's Services took that kid away. And you should have heard the outcry all over this country about that. We do not get involved with obesity unless a doctor is willing to get on the stand and say, this is abuse, this is life and death. Because there's two arguments about it. Is it abuse and neglect, or is it poor eating, poor social eating habits, working with the family? So we're going to do everything we can to try and keep a kid in the home. But this overeating, these obese children, that's going to be an up-and-coming issue that we're going to really have to face. The last type of neglect is emotional neglect. These include kids who are ignored or rejected or isolated. Okay, so those are the kids that we're looking at there, and we will talk about that in just a minute when we talk about the emotional abuse. Okay, so those are your 4 types of neglect. When you call Children's Services, we want you to put your values aside, and that's really hard to do because you guys feel certain ways about how kids should be raised and how they should live. So we ask you to put those values aside. So let's talk about 2 of these values right here. A child under 12 years of age should never be left home alone. And this may be an ethical dilemma for you that you may want to write about in your paper. I would say 8, 9, and 10 are the 3 big ones. So what do you think? Can a kid under 12 years of age should be left home alone? No? Is there an age requirement in the state of Ohio? Most people think it's 12. I can tell you that Children's Hospital will teach your 11-year-old how to become a certified babysitter. So in the state of Ohio, there is no age requirement. Now, if you want to leave your kid alone in a car, they have to be 12 or older. So there is a law about that. If police officers are out and about and they see your little kids in the car while you're in paying for gas or getting a gallon of milk, you're going to have a problem with the police. So why is that? Because how many of us know 12-year-olds that act like they're 8 or 9? Right? Yep. And how many of us know 12-year-olds that act like they're 14 and 15? So that's why. So what we look for here when we talk about kids being left home alone is their chronological development and their developmental. Okay, so chronological age and developmental age. That's what I meant to say. How long is a child home alone for? 20 minutes because mom's en route, or 8 hours because mom works a whole second shift? What are they responsible for? Are they making dinner for everybody? Are they just grabbing a snack off the counter? Do they have younger brothers and sisters they're responsible for, or is it just them? Do they know how to call 911? Do they know how to reach grandma? We look at all those things, okay? So last summer we got a call about a 10-year-old boy. He was home alone, and the woman that called in was the little old lady next door, and this was her statement to us. This 10-year-old boy has been home alone all summer. What a terrible summer. It's already the middle of August. School starts in 2 weeks. He hasn't gone to Cedar Point. He hasn't gone fishing, camping, nothing. What kind of summer is that for a little kid? What are you going to do about that, Children's Services? Is that a value-driven statement? Yeah. I'm sorry the kids had a bad summer. How many of you in here had a bad summer? You didn't get to go anywhere or do anything? Oh, lots of hands. Okay. I'm sorry. I wish I could help you with that. But her message had an underlying concern, and it's that we had a 10-year-old kid home alone all summer. So we go out to the home. I knock on the door, no answer. Knock on the door, no answer. So we call the police for what's called a child welfare assist. They send an officer out to the house. Cruiser, full uniform, you know the deal. He knocks on the door. Okay, well that's a lie. Do you know how officers, have you guys ever heard a police officer knock? Oh, we got some good stories in the room, right here.
Oh no, it's just
yeah.
cops. You gotta watch cops.
You gotta watch cops. They pound those doors down. Kid comes to the curtain, opens up the curtain in the front living room. Officer says, I need you to come to the door. Kid says, I need to see your badge. Right? I know. He shows him his badge. Kid comes over to the door, opens it up to where the chain link stops. Officer says, we need to talk to your mom. We know you're home alone. Kid pulls out the cell phone, calls mom, hands it to the officer. Mom answers after the first ring. She says, yes, Jacob. He says, this is Officer Bradley with Akron Police. We need you to come home. I'm here with Children's Services. Reference your child being left home alone. Mom said, I'll be home in 8 minutes. She was home in 5, and we know that because that little kid left us standing on the front porch. Pretty good, right? Compared to my 18-year-old daughter, who, depending on how cute the cop is, would be like, come on in, officer. Yeah. So we put the kid to the ultimate test. He did a good job. Mom worked down the street 8 minutes away at Circle K. She came home every day at lunchtime to give the kid lunch, spend a little bit of time with them. She was home by dinner time, but she couldn't afford any of this other good stuff that some of us can afford for our kids. Am I going to remove that kid and put him in foster care for 8 months? Is it a safety hazard? Yes. But we put them to the ultimate test. No children's services history, no APD history. By all accounts, a great mom. So our agency said, we will pay for the... Mom was super excited. She looked at 10-year-old Jacob and said, Jacob, daycare for 2 weeks. And what did Jacob say?
No.
No way. He's going to daycare. If you're driving through a community and kids are hanging outside their windows and in the street playing with the balls and not paying attention and you know nobody's home and you're concerned for their safety, you call Akron Police, whatever jurisdiction you're in. If you're as a teacher and you know kids are going home and you're concerned for their safety, you call Children's Services. Okay? Please know that nationwide in this country, 40% of our kindergartners go to an empty house every day. 40% of our babies. There may be some latchkey kids in this room. Are there any latchkey kids in this room? Nobody? After school? Waiting for mom to come home? 7 years old? Nice. Your parents loved you. All right. There are a lot of latchkey kids. Child safety is a major issue identified when dealing with a dirty house report. Absolutely. When you think of dirty houses, I want you to think of hoarders. Y'all seen that show at least once? Okay. Flip through it real quick. How do homes get like that? And if you tell me it's because the parents are lazy, that is a value-driven statement, and that's what I'm talking about. We do not want to hear when you call us. How do homes get like that? Yes?
The person can be mentally ill.
Mentally ill. Substance abuse. We had a home with 5 kids, little kids, mom and dad, and 7 cats. And the kids were removed because there was filthy, dirty conditions, not safe for the kids. How about waking up one day and thinking, holy crap, I got 5 little kids and 7 cats. How did I get in this situation? Being overwhelmed. Okay? Nobody buys a home thinking that they're going to be lazy and not clean it. There are other things in life that happen. Sometimes we call the parents to tell them that we're coming out, and people get really excited when we do that, especially if they're concerned about a dirty house. That's okay. If I leave my card in the door and mom calls and I say, listen, we got a call about a dirty house, I'd like to see you tonight or tomorrow, what do you think mom says? Tomorrow would be great, okay? Great, I can see you tonight at 6 o'clock or tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. would be fantastic. What's she doing all night? Cleaning her house. What did I want her to do anyway? Clean her house. What's the problem? Do you think that people on hoarders can clean their home in 12 hours? It's the same thing. That's what we're looking for. Now, how do I know the house was still filthy dirty? Because I can still smell it mixed with ammonia, right? Because the houses we talk about have quite a strong odor to them. I have 30 days to complete my assessment and my investigation, and in 2 weeks I'm going to be back out in your neighborhood. I'm just going to pop in. Hey, listen, I saw that you needed some diapers. Here's some diapers. You said you were having problems with food. I brought you a food voucher. You know what? I forgot to have you sign this piece of paper. I'm so embarrassed. I should have had you do this last time. Can I come in? Right? Because I want to see how the house got in 2 weeks. So, child safety is a major issue identified. And maybe you think Children's Services, that's ridiculous. But think about it this way. Dog feces throughout the house. Am I more concerned about a toddler or a teenager? So we look at child development a lot. Not that I don't care about my teenagers, that's not a way we want our kids to live. But boy, I'm running out there if I hear there's dog feces all over the place and there's babies in the home crawling around it. Can you be very, very poor and not be neglectful? Absolutely. Info, it's Summit 211 is the website, and the phone number is 211. And the big message we're getting out to our teachers and counselors is this. Go on there and find those resources for those parents. Don't make them do it on their own. Our families are so overwhelmed and can't think straight and don't know what to do next. They don't even know how they're going to feed their kids tonight, let alone figure out how to get on Summit 211. So as a teacher, when you're working with a family and they say to you, I'm really struggling with food, or our utilities are going to be shut off, or I'm having another baby, I have no idea where to get a crib, it could be something as simple as that. You go on this great website and you pull up the list of resources by zip code. So you're going to say, I'm looking for a crib in the 44319 zip code. They're going to give you all the places that get that stuff away. Summit County has 4,100 resources in our own little county here. We are so rich with resources. We are very competitive with Cleveland. I think we're better than Cleveland. So don't be afraid to go on there and support and help your families. Yeah, we are better. You're right, girl. Okay, that's a little bit about Neglect 101. Let's talk about discipline and spanking. And I'm just going to check this for the time. Okay, we're good. So what do you think? Spanking and other types of physical discipline are wrong and considered to be child abuse? Is that false? Are parents allowed to spank their kids?
Yes.
Yeah? And do I have any parents in the room? Y'all look pretty up. I do have one in the back. They're all looking at you. Sorry. How old are your kids?
12, 10, 4, 1.
Awesome. That's so much fun. Okay. Are you allowed to spank your kids? You do? I do too. All right. Parents are allowed to spank their kids. So the state has given us guidelines that we follow at Children's Services because we were going out on calls that were not abuse. Let me tell you, once Children's Services comes out to start an investigation, we ask all kinds of personal questions. We ask you things you wouldn't tell your best girlfriend or boyfriend, your mother or your sister. But we expect you to tell us because we're trying to determine if it's safe for kids to be in your home and if it's safe for you to be in your home. So here's what happened, and it happens at Children's Services. It's going to happen in this classroom. I'm going to give you some scenarios. You're going to tell me if it's abuse or discipline, okay? And we're not going to agree unless I got sisters in the room. Do I got any sisters in the room? Brothers? Okay. In the room? Is your sister or brother in the room? Okay, okay. I knew it. I knew it. Where? And where's the other one? Oh, I was looking over here. I thought that girl back there was just a twin. That's so funny. So I'm like, why aren't you two sitting by each other? That's good. Okay. So your values are pretty much the same because you were raised the same. Like they love each other so much they're in class together. That is so sweet. Okay. So I'm going to tell you. You tell me if it's discipline or abuse. I think I'm just going to say. Bless you.
Thank you.
You have a 2-year-old child that will not stop dropping the F-bomb at the most inopportune times, right? In front of your mom, in front of your priest, out at the grocery store, everyone's looking for you. You're like, I cannot stand the F-bomb. You are too little to be saying this. I don't even know where you heard it, right? So you decide you're going to give your child some Tabasco sauce, like a spoonful to drink. Is that abuse or discipline? Go.
Interesting discipline.
Discipline? Abuse? What do you think? Discipline? It's not fun if we all don't play along, guys. How about this? A woman gets called to her daycare center. This is the 3rd day in a row. My kid won't stop fighting. And every time he fights, I have to leave work, right? And when you leave work, you don't get paid because they're not a county worker, right? Because if you're a county worker, you get paid to leave. And you guys will too because you'll use vacation time. Anyway, I digress. So she goes home, she's crying, she's upset, and she calls her pediatrician, her grandma, and her mom, and what do they tell her to do to that kid?
Spank it. Bite it.
Bite him back.
Don't bite him back.
So she bites him, and then that kid shows up in your daycare center the next day, or it's a kindergarten, and they show up in your class, and they got a bite mark on their arm. Is that abuse or discipline? Discipline?
So doesn't our kid gonna think that he can bite other kids back if they bite him?
Okay. So you think it's questionable parenting,
Yeah.
to say the least. Anyone think that that's abuse? You do? Okay, you're not comfortable with that. Anybody in here ever got bit as a little kid? Your parents are like, yeah, I bit you right back. Okay, we got a couple. Your parents are abusive? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Last scenario. You smell something, you go downstairs here, your 5-year-old is playing with a lighter, you've told her over and over and over not to play with the lighter, you caught my favorite sweater on fire, you almost caught the whole living room on fire. Come here, I got something to show you. And she takes the lighter and she holds it underneath her daughter's hand.
That's abuse.
What do you think? Just to feel the heat. There was no burns or anything, but to feel the heat. Abuse or discipline? Is it abuse? It's okay. What do you think?
No, I don't think so.
Just discipline? Some people in the room think it's abuse?
Well, you know,
Blink twice. Apparently you're afraid of each other. I don't know what the problem is.
Depends on how long it was, how close, how burnt they got.
He's looking at extent of burns. Does it need treatment, bandages? These are 3 very baby scenarios because I couldn't tell you the stories that I have. One, your parents would be very upset with me, right? Because there are things they don't want you guys to know. We would not even go out on those 3 cases at Children's Services. So there are people here who think that that's abuse. We're not even going out on those. Okay? So, even in our own house at Children's Services, we could not agree on what was abuse and what was discipline. A mom whose daughter is in her face, angry, aggressive, and the kid is chest bumping her, and the kid's calling her mom a B and telling mom to F off, and mom leans over and pops the kid in the mouth. Is that abuse? No? What if the kid had braces and it busted open the top of her lip? Oh, the guy in the back's like, girl. Okay. It depends who you send out there. If you send out a 22-year-old girl who just got out of college here at Akron U, and she is calling her mom, so excited, this is textbook abuse, mom was fighting with her daughter, got out of control and angry, the kid dropped a couple bad words, but what kid doesn't, mommy? I mean, come on. And mom popped her in the mouth and left a mark. That is textbook abuse. But you send me out there, 41 years old, with an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I'm having a very different conversation with mom. What do we need to do about this? You can't be hitting your kid in the face. We need to talk about anger management, safe landing, counseling, and having a conversation with the kid. What are you doing? You can't do that to your mom. We need to talk about anger management, safe landing, counseling. Because I got 20 years experience. I'm not out of college. I've seen real life. If you think this is abuse, you've never raised a teenager, right? Would you agree? Just kidding. We don't want anyone hitting their kids in the mouth or in the head. That doesn't make us happy. But I'm certainly not going to substantiate abuse on that. When you substantiate abuse against a parent, you may have forever taken away their job. Because if you are teachers and you get into this fisticuffs with your daughter and you get a substantiated physical abuse, do you think you're going to be teaching any longer? You're done. If you volunteer, if you're a football coach, if you're the chess club manager, you are no longer doing that. If you volunteer at church or with Girl Scouts and they find out you have a substantiated child abuse, you're not doing it anymore. You can never foster, you can never adopt, ever. And if your niece and nephew 20 years from now end up in foster care because your brother and sister made a bad mistake, you can't have them. They're going into foster care because of that. So even in our own house, we could not agree on what was abuse and neglect. And it's really important that we do because it's got sometimes lifelong ramifications. So the state has given us guidelines. So question 10 is false. And I will give you the guidelines as teachers. Parents are allowed to spank their children. Oh, this is an ethical thing. Everyone writes about it. You might want to. Parents are allowed to spank their children. They are allowed to use instruments like a paddle or a belt, and in some cultures they use switches. They're allowed to leave superficial marks. Superficial means not needing medical attention. So, if a kid came into your classroom and they got whooped this morning and you needed to put Neosporin and a Band-Aid on their little butt, is that medical attention? Yes. So that would have crossed the line. These superficial marks can be on 3 parts of the body. The buttocks, top of the legs, and the top of the arms. Okay?
Top of the arms.
Top of the arms, because they grab their kid up. So let me give you a scenario, because I know people get upset about this. Anybody in here spanked as a child? Anybody spanked? Anybody ever go to the mirror when they're done, when mommy's done, and you're looking in the mirror at your butt? Come on, I wasn't the only one. Thank you for the honesty. And what did you see?
Big hand mark.
Hand mark? Red? Welts? Maybe a light bruise? 2 hours later, grandma comes over to visit. Daddy comes home from work early, or sister comes home from band camp. And you cannot wait to show her how mean your mommy was, and you got the evidence now. And you run back to the mirror to look, and what happened? They're gone. That's what I'm talking about. Was that abuse? That's what I'm talking about. Mornings are very rough for a lot of families. There are a lot of kids that get spanked in the morning, and they show up in your classroom, and you're freaking out because mom spanked the kid, and they got a hand mark, or they got bruising, a little bit of bruising on their butt. When you call Children's Services about that, we may say this does not fall under our guidelines for abuse. You're going to get real excited about that. Those are the state guidelines that we have. Now, if you're working with a little kid and she has 4 dime-sized bruises on her arm, superficial marks on the top of her arm, but while you're talking with her, she says, "It was a terrible night. My mommy and my daddy, they were fighting. My daddy was pushing her, and then they were drinking, and they had this smelly stuff they were smoking. I don't know." Is that a call to Children's Services? Yes, because we got domestic violence. We got possibly domestic violence, some substance abuse maybe, and mom snatching the kid up. All right, so just some parameters around that. You may not like that. There's somebody in this room that's like, "I will never hit my kid." We love that. There are 12 ways to discipline. Number 13 is spanking. We don't want you to spank. Bruises on the elbows, knees, shins, and forehead are likely to be accidental in a preschooler. It's true. You need to understand child development as you start working with these young kids. What if it said likely to be accidental in a baby? False. So you need to understand child development. Okay, by definition, emotional abuse can be a one-time occurrence between a parent and a child. False. You've all said things to your mom you wish you could take back, and your mom has said things to you that they wish they could take back, right? Because you have a great loving relationship, you come back together and it's fine. By definition, emotional abuse has to be chronic and it has to impact a child's needs. It has to be chronic and impact their needs. Y'all hear that lady at Walmart screaming at her kid?
Yep.
Yeah, y'all hear it, right? You have to tell me how it impacts that child, because when the child keeps acting up and he shows no fear towards mom and he's verbal and cognizant, All of this that she's doing is not impacting his care. Anybody read that terrible book, A Child Named It? Yeah, that's terrible. Anybody else? Just the one? Two, okay. That's what I'm talking about, where it impacts a child's development. All right? Bonding and attachment are important elements of child development is true, right? So parents who work their case plan with Children's Services but do not visit their child will not get their child back. Visitation is so important. Bonding and attachment are so important. We really watch that as we're working with families. I would encourage all of you. Are you guys in sophomore, junior level, or do I have seniors in the room? Let me see seniors. A couple seniors? Nice. You guys have got to read at least an article. You got to get familiar with this reactive attachment disorder. These are kids who have emotional problems because they failed to attach to their parents. Some of them are birth children, for whatever reason, don't bond. Some of them are adopted children. You have got to learn about that. These are the kids that sit in the back of the classroom, have trouble making friends, just as soon spit on you than talk to you. Okay, there's a whole wide array of problems that they have. If you want to be a great instrumental teacher, you need to understand this is the new up-and-coming thing, these kids who have these attachment issues, and it's because of things that have happened to them during their development. All right, sexual abuse usually occurs between a child and a stranger.
False.
False. So I have schools that call and say, Julia, can you come to a stranger danger training? And I say, yes, I can't wait. We have a great stranger danger training. We get to play with the kids. It's tons of fun. And then we're going to talk about mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. And they're, no. We're not going to talk about that. We don't want to upset anybody. Okay, find another trainer. 96% of the time, it's someone the child knows and loves. 98% of the time, it's like this really great person in their life, okay? Sexual abuse is about grooming. It's not like tonight's the night dad's going to try to sexually abuse his daughter. It's a whole grooming process. When you guys get your 4 hours of training, we're going to nail this hard with you. Probably not the right words to use in this context. We're going to teach you well about this topic, okay? We want you guys to have all the information, but we're running out of time, so we're going to go through these questions. 14, it's a grooming process, okay? They wrap it into secrecy, they blame the child, they bribe the child, they give the child gifts. If it's somebody from outside of the family, they're giving gifts to the child and to the family, trying to work their way in. Think Jerry Sandusky. Jerry Sandusky, he had to groom the parents and he had to groom the children. What did he promise the parents? Scholarships, a chance for college play. What did he offer the kids? Gifts, a chance to go on college campus. Do I have any players in the room, like sports players? Okay, just the one? What do you softball? Volleyball, sorry. We bring up some of our foster kids to meet kids just like you. And the football, basketball, volleyball, baseball, and you would think that our little foster kids were meeting like LeBron James. It's so cute how excited they get. Can I have your autograph? Can we take your picture? I'm like, seriously, they're just 21-year-old kids? Take the picture. It's so cute. So can you imagine meeting Penn State players, being on the field, being in their locker room, and having these great gifts given to you? So it is a grooming process. Children will frequently fantasize that they have been sexually abused to get even with an adult. It's false. Most kids do not make that up. Now, we will investigate false accusations, and we get them maybe once or twice a year, but certainly not frequently at all. As well as we'll investigate ones that we know to be true, all right? So we don't just walk in thinking this is a made-up story by any means. We look at what a child's knowledge is, okay? So let's say you're a kindergarten teacher, and it's May, and you're making vases for mom. And all the kids are sculpting it out of clay. And as you're walking around the room, you come up to Molly, and Molly has sculpted testicles and a penis. Are you freaking out? Are you freaking out? Okay. Yes, you're freaking out. And as you're crumbling it up so the other kids don't see it, you say to Molly, Molly, what is that? And she's like, that's my daddy's stinky wink. And you go, well, how do you know that? Because this morning in the bathroom, I walked in on him and I was like, hoo-hoo, right? Now, are you going to call mom and say, well, I hear you had a little excitement this morning? Yes. What if the child says, because every night when daddy puts me to bed, he shows me? Is that a call to Children's Services?
Yeah.
So you are expected to ask some questions. We're not happy that the little girl knows that stuff, but she figured it out. Okay? So we look at their knowledge base. By teaching a child about sexual assault, you may frighten the child or cause the child to be sexually active. It's false. So obviously the conversation I have with my 18-year-old here on campus is very different than the conversation I have with my child at home. Two totally different situations, and we're not trying to scare anybody. Abuse may be directed toward only one child in the family. It's true. Those are called target kids. Here's an ethical question for you. It's so disturbing because this is such a beautiful classroom that you're looking out and seeing all this stuff going on. Do I remove all the kids or just the target kid? All the kids? But I just told you that the removal is terrible. So am I removing all the kids or just the target kid? If I only remove the victim, it's victimizing them further because everyone got to stay but me. Okay? Abused or neglected children may become abusive and neglectful parents. It's very true. If you guys were raised in a very chaotic, abusive, or neglectful home, as you parent, you need to make conscious choices to do things differently. Abused children will usually discuss the abuse in an effort to stop it. It's false. Most kids do not talk about it. And a child may be abused without anyone ever knowing.
True.
It's true. Okay? So they go from your classroom to the next classroom, and they tell that next teacher that for the last 3 years they've been sexually abused. You're beating yourself up thinking, why didn't I know that? What did I miss? Don't get upset. It was not the time for the child to tell. I have been out on cases where I thought I was just going out on a dirty house call. Nope. The child chose that day, that moment to tell me for whatever reason that grandma's coming in her bedroom at night and messing with her. So this dirty house call, which is about a 20-minute home visit, has turned into a full-fledged criminal investigation because today is the day the child was willing to tell. I've gone out on sex abuse cases, forensically trained with my dolls, my books, my notes, everything. The kid was not going to talk today. There's nothing I can do if I don't get a disclosure. Okay? So don't be beating yourself up about that as teachers. Our mandated reporting law was written by state legislatures down in Columbus. It's a very well-written law. What I did was I took it, broke it into the sheet, and we're going to go ahead and go through the sheet. When we're done, you will be experts on mandated reporting. This is about an hour-long training that we are going to do in 25 minutes. So we are going to go fast. Are you guys ready? Let's talk fast. Okay. So what do you think? You're a mandated reporter 24/7. You think? When you get your teacher's license, that's it? That's false. You are only a mandated reporter in your capacity as a teacher. Now, if you're a football coach, you're still a personnel of the school. Volleyball coach, my friend right here, my cheerleading advisor, band director. If you're in Disney with your football team, I don't know why you would do that, but, and you're in your capacity as a leadership, even though you're not here, are you a mandated reporter? Yes. You are not a mandated reporter on your brother, your sister, that soccer mom, friend, lady next door. You don't have to call me about them. You only have to call me if they're in your classroom. That may be an ethical dilemma you want to write about. You may say, my gosh, I'm going to sit through 4 hours of child abuse training and they don't think I'm going to call. This should be mandated for everybody. It's not in the state of Ohio, not yet. Medical health, mental health, and legal professionals are not legally required to report child abuse and neglect because of client confidentiality is false. Child abuse and neglect trumps every law of confidentiality. Okay? You must have evidence of abuse or neglect before you report it. It's false. All you need is a suspicion. If you suspect abuse, you call Children's Services. We'll get the evidence, you just call us. Early reporting is encouraged so that the child may be removed from the home of the abusive parent. Does your paper say abusive or just parent?
Abusive parent.
Just say abusive? Okay. Well, then I made that a trick question, I'm sorry. But this is false. Early reporting is not encouraged. Early reporting is required. Okay? So I'm not encouraging you to call. The law is very, very specific. You must call. Question, okay, so this goes with the first part of the law, which is A. It removes the option of choice. It requires immediate reporting. You should not have your niece and nephew in your classroom. You should not have your best friend's kid in your classroom because you cannot rationalize out, this kid has a black eye, I think my brother did it to him, but you know what, my brother's having a hard time, his wife's getting ready to leave, they're going to lose their home, and this kid kind of is a pain in the butt. You can't do that. The law is very clear. It removes that option. So don't even put yourself in that situation. We want you to call right away. If you wait until the end of the day, what could happen? Are the parents going to show up to take the kids home or put the kid on the bus? Are you going to release a child to a parent that you think is abusive? You have to. You cannot detain children. That is not your function. I could be doing a really great interview in your classroom or in your administrator's office. When that bell rings, it's time for the kid to go home, that's it. There's one profession that can detain children, and who's that? The police. So if it's that bad or you're worried that the parents are going to show up, you call the police. They will detain. Put yourself in the parent's perspective. My dad in the back. You're waiting at the end of the day, the big yellow bus drives by, you don't have any kids getting off the bus. Are you freaking out? It's not fair to you. So we would call him to say, I'm here, my name's Julia with Children's Services, I'm here with your 2 babies at the daycare center, and you need to come up here. How fast are you going to get up there? Pretty fast. That's okay, I want to talk to you anyway. So come on. Okay? It's not fair for parents not to know who's talking to their kids or why the kids aren't coming home. Question 5, asking your principal or counselor to make the call is permissible as long as the call is made. Is false. It has to be you. Look at B. You cannot delegate your duty to another. You cannot ask anyone else. You can't say we're in the middle of OGT testing or I got a really great circle time going. It has to be you that makes that call. You can ask your principal to sit in your classroom, but it has to be you that makes that call. If you report abuse or neglect and it's unfounded, you are liable for civil or criminal suit. That's false. Okay, so look at C. You are protected by law through good faith reporting. You cannot be successfully sued. This law is so well written that in the 19 years I've been doing this job and all my friends and all the research I've done for this particular part of my job, I've not found one mandated reporter to be successfully sued for calling. There was a dad in Southern Ohio who successfully sued the school district and the teacher for failing to call. She got up on the stand and said, yeah, I did suspect that the kids were being abused, but I did not want to become involved in a domestic situation because the parents were going through a nasty divorce. He won millions of dollars on behalf of his kids because she did not report the abuse. Now, I know your question. Did Dad call Children's Services? I don't know. In the state of Ohio, parents are not mandated reporters. So he didn't have to call. But the school knew and didn't call. So don't do that to your school district. Don't do that to yourself.
Is there a way that he was abusing his children?
It wasn't him.
Oh, okay.
It was his ex-wife.
Okay.
And he was calling the teacher saying, I'm seeing these marks and bruises. Are you seeing them? I know you are. Why don't you call Children's Services? Come on, I need your help. I need your help. And she was like, this is a personal issue between you and your wife. I see what I see, but I'm not calling. It's not acceptable. So she suspected abuse, admitted on the stand to suspecting abuse. That's not acceptable. If you fail to report abuse or neglect, it's a misdemeanor, 4th degree, 30 days in jail, and a fine of $250. Yeah, I can't make that up. That's true, right? And listen, I'm in graduate school. I got 2 kids, a hungry husband, lots of dogs and cats, bills to pay, and work to do. I'm exhausted. So you tell me I could go somewhere and not make somebody's bed or cook meal for 30 days, I'm all over it. I'm tired, right? You're tired, I know. And I'll write you a check right now for $250. I'll just call it rent. It's not a big deal to me. But you know how that's going to hurt you? And at some point, you guys, that's not going to hurt you either. How it's going to hurt you is you're going to lose your license. It is very clear when you get your license. Anyone here want to get licensed as a teacher? Great. When you get your license, it's very clear with your Board of Ethics that you call in Children's Services if you suspect abuse or neglect. If you fail to do that, your board will be notified and you may lose your license. An anonymous report of abuse or neglect will not be investigated as false. We go out on those. Less than 17% of our calls are anonymous. This goes with the 4th part of the law. You have rights to follow-up information. When you call me about a little kid who's been abused, do you think you're going to think about that kid all night? You're going to talk to your mom, you're going to be crying, you're going to be upset. I heard Children's Services, they do something, you can't eat, maybe you can't sleep, you're so upset. You get to work early, you can't wait to see the kid, and the kid doesn't show up. You are going to freak out. I promise. So, because you left your name, you have rights to follow-up information, and we will share some information with you. We will not tell your principal or counselor, we will tell you. So you call us, and we'll tell you what happened. Okay? The identity of the person who reports child abuse and neglect is protected by law is true. I will not tell the family you called. Do they figure it out? Yes. Lots of different ways. The story that's told, the name that's used. For example, they'll sometimes just ask the kid, who did you say that to? Come here. Who did you tell that to? And as a social worker in the home, I'm saying, now listen, it doesn't really matter who she told it to. I'm just here, let's just talk. Okay, that's good for right now, but you can bet your bottom dollar when I leave that house, they're asking their kid, who did you say that to? Okay? If they show up at your school and they ask you if you were the one that called, we do not want you to lie. We want you to say, everyone here at Irvine Middle School is a mandated reporter, and I'm really sorry this happened. Because in 6 weeks, you will be called to court. You will be subpoenaed. We will have a court hearing. You will have to tell the court at that time that you, as a mandated reporter, were the one that called in the referral. So your identity is protected until we go to court 6 weeks later. All right? Children's Services can come to your school to complete an assessment only under certain exceptions, and that's true. Those exceptions are in the middle. It has everything to do with child safety and nothing to do with the convenience of Children's Services, right? So we're only going to come to the school with these exceptions. We'll have a note to give to the principal, and it'll be all signed off on. The police should be contacted first in some circumstances is true. This is if kids are in imminent danger, pornography, any kind of sex abuse, or severe physical abuse. Again, they are the ones that will detain the child. 12, Children's Services is permitted to remove the clothing of kids in an effort to document bruises. That's both true and false. At Children's Services, by law, we are allowed to remove Johnny's shorts to take a picture of the bruise on his butt. However, there are a series of photos that you have to take to, what's the word I'm looking for? To verify that that's really Johnny. So I have to take a picture of Johnny in front of the building, then I got to take a picture of Johnny with just his clothes, and I got to take a head and shot picture, and then this shirt has to be in the picture some way so that they can identify, because how do they know that that was Johnny's butt and not some other kid's butt? So, we're not trained like that. Police officers are, and so is the hospital. So, we have a great hospital here in Summit County. We're just going to go ahead and take the kids over to Children's Hospital. So legally we are allowed to, but we do not do that here in Summit County. Okay? So that is the one-on-one on mandated reporting. Again, we're going to get you guys real good when you get into your district. The third page is for your reading. And you know what? You may find some ethical things on here if you wanted to. This deals with your response to the child. What are you going to say when a child tells you his mother threw him down the stairs this morning? We're going to give you some words to use. What are you going to say when a child says, I have something to tell you, but you got to promise not to tell anybody? Because you can't promise not to tell anybody. This gives you some of the words to use, okay? So go ahead and take a look on that on your own. Now, I gave you some ethical dilemmas. I hope that you guys found a couple in there that you may want to write about. I do want to talk to you about reporting a colleague. One of the questions is, how do you feel about reporting a colleague? And I'm looking at your beautiful faces, and you're all so young, and you think I'm creepy, I know. It's okay. I'm going to tell you that it's not easy to report a colleague. And if you write in your paper, I have no problem reporting a colleague. I'll do it in a heartbeat. I'm going to ask your teacher to fail you because it's not that easy. I want you to give it some thought. I have a terrible case scenario to tell you. I hate this story, but it's one way that I can get my point across to you that it's not easy. Okay? So, there was a school called Sam Salem. It was an Akron public school. It had many multi-handicapped classes in it. It's kind of where they sent the kids. And I had an opportunity to work with a 14-year-old boy. He had cerebral palsy and was nonverbal. Okay? He was strapped into a wheelchair. And he had an aide, of course. And there were many aides in this classroom because many of the children had severe physical disabilities. So, his aide was a man, middle-aged man. Unfortunately for the aide, this child had several bowel movements a day at school. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, we're talking a 14-year-old young man having bowel movements. It's messy, not fun, stinky. But that's the kid that he got. So, we're in September, October, November, kid's pooping in his diaper. October, November, December, January. Come February, the guy had had enough. The kid pooped in his pants. The guy puts up the board to give him privacy. He's got to unstrap the kid. He's got to pick him up and put him on the floor. And he's got to undress him and change his diaper. And I've had it. All this shit in your diaper. Every day, all the time. You just poop in this diaper all the time. I'm sick of changing. He's saying this to the kid. As the other aide is like, what is going on behind there? She comes around just in time to see him take his finger and put it in the kid's rectum to teach him a lesson. Really? What did he just do to that boy? He raped him. The teacher calls Children's Services, the teacher's aide. She says, listen, I've really had enough with this man. I mean, he has not been nice to this kid since September, since school started, but today was the final straw. Really? The final straw? You let all this other stuff go on, but today was the final straw? What if you would have called me September, October, November? Hell, call me in January. We wouldn't have had this in February. Do you know why I remember this case? It was not the most terrible sex abuse case ever. It wasn't. I've had horrible sex abuse cases. I remember it because of the following I had to do. I had to get in my car. I had to drive out to the parents' home, which was a very loving two-parent family who lived in Firestone Park, and tell them that the only mistake they made that day was putting their kid on the bus to go to school. And I had to tell them that their son had been raped by this teacher. And I had to give them all the details. It was terrible. This was the perfect target kid. He was nonverbal. And do you think this does any damage to a rectum? It doesn't. So there was no physical damage. Thank God we had the eyewitness with the lady. When I got there, and I was the lead intake worker at Children's Services, and the sergeant from the Akron Police Department, they didn't even send out a patrol officer or detective, they sent out the sergeant. When we went to that school to interview him within an hour, okay, of getting the call, he had his union rep and his lawyer on either side of him. So my story to you is, it's not that easy. You guys are cute and young, and you're going to be competing for the same job in the same great school district. And when you both get it, because they find enough money, because you're both so great they can't decide, and you guys are like, oh my God, we get to share our professional life together. It's so exciting. You get this great classroom, and you get to spend all of this money to buy all this cool stuff, and you sit through hours and hours of orientation and training, and you celebrate babies and marriages and maybe even divorces you might celebrate. I don't know what your life holds for you, right? You're going to have this great life with your friend, and you're going to see them do something, and you're going to be like, wait, no, I did not. I know her, I've known her since Akron U. No, that didn't happen. Don't do that. It is not black and white. It is difficult. I've had my boss do things that I thought was unethical. I didn't approach him at all. It wasn't abuse or neglect, but it was the way that he treated a client. I thought it was terrible. And I just kept it right here. It's not easy. And what if the person abusing these kids is a little old lady down the hall that nobody really likes to mess with because she's crabby and will make your life hell? What if it's the president of your union? It's not easy. Please do not write in your paper, it will be the easiest thing, it's black and white, it's no problem. I'm begging you not to do that and to give it some thought, because it's not easy to do. And I am really sorry that that is like my last story to give to you, but it goes with how your syllabus is listed out, and it only makes sense at this point. That guy ended up being charged criminally and ended up losing his license. He got a suspended jail sentence, probation, and he left the state. I was into that. The woman who reported way after the fact, right, who should have reported here but reported here, was not charged at all because she did report the incident of abuse or neglect. But boy, wouldn't it have been nice if she kind of called us up here. Okay, so we really want you guys to think about that. I guess Miss Linda says you guys have 1 week to write it. You guys can write it in 20 minutes, right? It's just 2 pages, double spaced, triple spaced. 1.5 font on each 1.5? Or an inch? 2 inches. She said 2 inches.
2 inches.
It is 20 after. Do you guys have any questions? Do you think that you have enough to write a 2-page reflection paper?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, right? Come on.